he's not mulatto, he's Italian. And then they go on to say, be proud of who you are. Our family's first language was Cajun French, but we're realizing now that it was actually Creole. And I'm sorry, I have no idea what just happened. I think I just, it's just sometimes I just sit here, I just feel like a total fraud, honestly. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And if you've been on this channel, you know that I love delving into my family story and kind of getting the tea on other people's family secrets because we've had so many in mine. And I recently decided to retake the 23andMe test, and that video will be coming soon. I just sent in my sample, so it might be a little while. But I was just browsing on their sub on Reddit where people just kind of post their experiences and questions with it. And a post grabbed my attention and I want to read it and go through it with you. So 5 months ago, the poster Pink Milk 999 said, was always told I'm Italian and now I'm just confused. Was told my whole life that my dad is Italian and my mom is Spanish. Finally took a DNA test and now we're all confused. Now, before I get into this, if you would like to support the channel or have an ad-free experience or just connect, jump over to my Patreon. It is wonderful. I love connecting with you there. I have little chats there and I upload my content ad-free and do behind the scenes stuff, all that. So you can jump over there if you want to skip the ads. So I want to share this person's results. And then what I really want to get to though are some of the comments because stuff starts coming out in this comment section that pretty much shocked me. It felt like someone was reading the pages out of my diary. So basically this person thought they were Italian and Spanish. So they take the test. They're about 88% Northwestern European and only 4% Italian is showing up. So not very much, but page 2, that's where it gets interesting, is 11% West African, basically West and East African combined, and then trace amounts of indigenous ancestry. Okay, so if you've been on the channel, you probably know where this is going. I started reading through the comments and this person said they asked their dad, he took one and they were just as surprised. So this person has this understanding of growing up Italian, whatever that means to them. And they're an American and we're going to get to that. And turns out they're not as Italian as they expected. I think they expected probably around 50%. And there was a pretty high amount of West and East African showing up. Now, is 10, 11, 12% a ton? No, it's not a ton. But when you don't realize that you have that ancestry, there's usually something else going on here. So right here, common for mixed folks who wanted to pass. And you're probably familiar with the term passing for white, all of that. I only recently learned those terms as I was researching my own family story from Louisiana. And down here, the old, he's not mulatto, he's Italian. And then they go on to say, be proud of who you are. There was a time where even if you were trying to pass for white, if you were a little bit darker than what would be easy to pass for, a lot of times people would say, well, we have Italian ancestry. That's why we're like this. It's not because we're of African heritage. And down here, this person said the Italian could have been an excuse for having dark features if your grandparent was passing for white. Italian was actually the common thing for them to say they were when people were passing for white. But it could have also just been the only thing they knew about in their ancestry. You do score 4% of it after all. And remember, these numbers are pretty fluid. When I took my test before, I think, I'll put it up here, but I think I was like 78% European and at least then like 15% Middle Eastern or North African or something like that. And I'm not expecting those same numbers when I take the test again because they're always changing the algorithm. And so you can't take these as, gospel, gospel numbers of who you are. But there's a part that we haven't gotten to yet. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, because we can make assumptions and say, well, maybe the numbers are this or that, or, they do have Italian. And So this person said, from the South, perchance, there were a lot of part black passers during Jim Crow who identified as Italians and such to be classified as white. And OP says, yes, I'm from Louisiana. And well, I'm always taken aback when something just suddenly starts to get emotional when I'm talking about it. I think I'm coming to a post like this that may seem kind of silly or trivial to some, but now I understand that even if you have like only 10, 11, 12% West African, which I'm guessing, I think that was the majority of what it was. Maybe it was not, I'll have to go back, but it's not like saying, yeah, well, they're 88%. This other thing, like why you hyper fixated on this smaller piece of the pie. It's because that smaller piece of the pie was causing a whole heap of pain for that family 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago. And it wasn't that small 1 or 2 generations ago, most likely. I know we can't just double numbers to get to, exact guesses, but if they're about 12%, that means that he had a great grandparent or they had a great grandparent that could have been 100% African American. Like, so think about, for me, I'm 38. I just had my birthday this week. That's how I remember my age, because I never know how old I am. And my great grandmother was born in 1900, and that wasn't that long ago. And she was born in Louisiana, and she was about 40-50% West African. And there is no doubt in my mind now about why she decided to do what she did and distance herself. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of pain associated with that comes out in interesting ways, because this person is probably young based on the way that they're talking. They seem like they're probably maybe a little younger than me. You're going to be growing up with a different experience. And if you've been shielded from this history, if you don't know your family's story, it can be hard to reconcile this. It can just be like, oh, cool. Like there's some African that I didn't know about. Somebody commented American moment. And I really like that. I think it really is an American moment. I was reading something, I think it was like a sub on here, of people asking, why are Americans so obsessed with their DNA and their genealogy? I think we are kind of obsessed. I think there's a lot of reasons why. Part of it is because there's a whole heck of a lot of us that have no idea about our family's story. And the records aren't easy to get, or they don't exist anymore, or they weren't kept in the first place. It's amazing to me now that you can just sit here and spit into a tube. I mean, these are things that my great-grandmother could have never imagined would be happening, never in her wildest dreams. So when she was lying about her ancestry, what things did she see and experience in Louisiana growing up? I'll never know. But I'm guessing that if you're feeling like you need to completely change your identity, something happened. You saw something that happened, or something happened to you. And this is the aftermath. This is where in 2024, people are logging on to the internet and saying, hey, I thought I was Italian. What is happening with this test? Parents don't know. And there was one more comment I just wanted to read. This person said, I'm always a bit confused when I see someone who posts these results. Do you have grandparents alive you could speak with? Do they ever tell stories? My results weren't a surprise at all. Both my parents told stories about their families and everything matched up. And I'm reading this. I'm like, well, aren't you lucky? Like, that's not the story for a lot of us. And I think a lot of people that did have family members who passed or tried to pass, or cut that ancestry off and try to start anew as somebody else, the stories are not going to line up. The stories are crazy. I mean, my great-grandmother literally changed her birth date, changed her name. But the response from Pink Milk said, my grandpa on my mom's side doesn't talk about it. His first language is Cajun French. And I wanted to stop there because my cousin Audrey had said that our family's first language was Cajun French, but we're realizing now that it was actually Creole. And I'm sorry, I have no idea what just happened. I think it's just sometimes I just sit here and I just feel like a total fraud, honestly. I gotta sit here and just explain in a very factual way, like this is what happened, this, and this. But honestly, sometimes I get hit with just an overwhelming sense of loss. And I think there's just some things that it's too late. It's I'm not going to be able to get it back the same way. It's frustrating. And so, seeing this story, OP goes on to saying that his grandpa was always called black and faced a lot of racism. So now he's racist, but insists there's no black. It's like, this is like, it's verbatim our story. And I think it's good to laugh about it and see that there's a lot of us like this. But I do feel really hopeful because there's also so many of us, wherever your background is from, whatever if you know this much or this much, if you know this much or this much of your family story, like we're all doing this together. And when you're doing that, what you're doing is so incredibly important. And I have to say this to myself sometimes too, because I think, well, who cares about having this stuff written down and having these stories? Like, it's never going to be the same as growing up in a culture or an environment, but it's better than it being lost. And so, I think about when there's a house fire or something, you're not going to be able to save everything. Like, at some point we recognize like a bad thing is happening and we're going to lose a lot. So we need to save as much as we can. This was surprising. I thought it was just going to be an Italian having a lot of Middle Eastern. I had no idea it was going to bring me back to Louisiana and feel so familiar. It feels really, really familiar. And if you are interested in working on your family story, I want you to get this free download that I have for you. You can get this free download by just clicking the link below. I wrote down everything I did when I was researching my family and how I was preserving the stories, and I created a little workbook that I have on my website. The first section I want you to download. It's totally free and it will help you. You can print it out as many times as you want to help you get started talking to family members. And when you kind of run into issues doing this, because you will run into problems, you'll run into grandparents who don't want to talk, or aunties who don't know the story, they're getting it totally wrong and it's contradicting what your mom said over here. And it will just help you get that stuff organized and figure out what's next. So thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. I'll wear my green so I wouldn't get pinched. And we'll talk soon.